of harvesting the electrical energy that comes out of the sun into a panel and converting it into usable energy that can then be stored in a battery via a charge controller and be output to a DC or AC circuit so that you can use your appliances. Whoa, that sounds really complicated. But actually it's not. We have a full breakout of how a solar system works right down here. Ryan's going to be going over that in a minute. But there are three basic things going on in a solar system that you need to know. Number one, you have your generating circuit. That can be a combination of solar panel, generator, it can be a charging solenoid off your vehicle, it can be wind power, soon it can be probably hydroelectric power. It's anything that puts energy into your batteries, which is the second part of your system, the storage. So you generate the power and you store it in a battery. A battery is either going to be made out of lead acid, which is your conventional automotive battery, or a newer type of battery is a lithium-ion battery. Typically in an RV or a car or anything, you're going to find a lead-acid battery, but you're going to be hearing a lot about lithium-ion because they're actually a much better technology. We'll be talking about that a little bit later this afternoon. So, your battery system is what holds the energy that you're able to generate by driving around, by harvesting it from the sun, by throwing a wind generator out there, and it takes it and it stores it with chemistry and magic until you need to use it later. Because the big problem with solar is that when there is no sun, you have no energy. So you need batteries just as much as you need solar panels. And likewise, you also need the third part of the system just as much as you need the other two, which is your output circuit. That can be your inverter, that can be your USB ports, that can be your DC ports. Anything that goes off of your battery and uses energy from it is called a load. This is the third part of your system. Remember those three parts as we go along, because everything else we talk about is just how to deal with one of those three parts: charging, storing, and usage. So, now that I've gone over a little bit of the philosophy on it, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan real quick so that he can go over the individual parts of the solar system that I just talked about. So, Ryan, Blue Sky.
Thank you, Seth. I'm with Blue Sky Energy, and back in 1998, RV Power Products, what was formerly called, or prior to Blue Sky Energy, we were called RV Power Products. We brought maximum power point technology to the market. Now, a lot of these things that I go over, when I give these seminars and I come year after year, it seems like the first time I come here, people are like, I understood half of what you said. The next year, they're like, I got 75%. And it goes on and on. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. I'm going to cover a lot of topics today because usually I run long and I don't want to, take over the hour time. Now, specifically, there's two types of solar chargers out there. You've got your maximum power point tracking, or MPPT, and then you've got your pulse width modulation, or PWM. Now, if you look at a general solar panel, and I'm going to use air quotes as a 12-volt solar panel, because the categories of panels, they actually vary quite a bit with their voltages. And so I don't want you to confuse if I say a 12-volt panel what its actual output voltage is if I say 24-volt lotta. So I'd always recommend you look at the specifications of your panel, because often people will group panels into a category that has nothing to do with their voltage and is incorrect. Now, talking about your standard 12-volt panel, its output voltage under load, or its VMP, its volts max power, it's going to be about 18 volts. And sun angle, panel temperature, some things like that can actually affect the output voltage, but not by a whole lot. Now, a PWM, or pulse width modulation controller, when in bulk mode, when providing constant current, when it's trying to raise your battery's voltage as quickly as possible, it basically connects your solar panel directly to your battery. And when you do that, you force that solar panel's output voltage, say 18 volts, down to your battery's voltage, about 12.5 volts. Now, a maximum power point tracking, or MPPT controller, will run your panel at its ideal voltage, and then it does a buck-type energy conversion. It's lowering the voltage, but increasing the current. So, for example, if you had 10 amps coming at 18 volts, you'd have 13 amps coming out at 12. So watt to watt, you're still getting all the power, and so you guys spend a lot of money on your solar panels, on your batteries, and it seems kind of silly to just chop one leg off and only harvest about 70% of your potential panel's output. As you get to the higher wattage panels, say right around 200 watts seems to be the breaking point, then your voltage also increases on these panels. So if you have a classic residential panel, a 72 cell panel, its output voltage under load is going to be like 36 volts. So it gets even more important to harvest it, to be able to butt that energy down, or else you're going to get about a 30-year panel's output. Now, moving forward, and I'll give it back to Seth, and I'll go back and forth here a little bit. Now, when you're charging a battery, you really want to do a multi-stage charge profile. Now, initially, your controller wakes up, woohoo, and it goes up to its absorption voltage. Now, this can vary depending on what kind of battery you have. Some AGMs, like Lifeline, want 14.3 volts. Trojan T105 wants 14.8 volts. All of these set points are programmable on our chargers. So we don't take a blind eye and go, la, 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 this is my flooded setting, this is my sealed setting. You can pick your individual voltages, because we found even amongst different battery types, the preferred voltages vary quite a bit. For example, the Lifeline 14.3 AGM, the Full River 14.7 AGM. They're both AGMs, drastically different voltages. Now, the reason you want to bring your battery up to this higher absorption voltage, and by the way, this first set point used to be called constant, then it was called acceptance, now it's called absorption. It sounds a little bit like an AA meeting. But, so if you have your controller and you're saying I'm in acceptance mode, just understand that's the same as absorption. Also, a lot of times if you look at your battery manufacturer's data sheet, when you say, hey, Ryan said, program the right voltages, a lot of battery manufacturers will refer to bulk as a voltage. We use the term bulk as a mode. You're in bulk mode. You're trying to raise the battery voltage. A lot of battery manufacturers will say, this is your bulk voltage. So if you're looking at your data sheets in your batteries and they use the term bulk voltage, they mean the absorption voltage. Now, like EV battery 101 action, to put it simply, when you discharge a battery, basically the sulfur molecules attach to the lead plates, and this is called sulfation. So if you really think about it, basically as you discharge a battery, like a coral reef grows on these lead plates, right? And as you charge the battery, the coral reef turns back into acid. That's normal and that's healthy. Now you need to get proper absorption voltage in order to turn that coral reef back into acid properly for your own particular battery. Now, after you maintain the absorption voltage for either a time or amount of current, then you drop down the float voltage, which again varies between battery manufacturers. Could be 13.2, could be 13.7. So you really want to dial these in to extend the lifespan of your battery. Now, when you're holding the absorption voltage, there's two ways we can make this transition down to float. Now, if you just have a standalone charge controller, and you don't know, the charge controller doesn't know the net current reaching your battery, it's just going to base it on time. The amount of time could vary between 5 minutes and 4 hours, depending on how discharged your batteries are. But at the same time, as an industry standard, we say about 2 hours is average. Of course, you can program whatever you want. Now, the second way to make this transition from the higher absorption voltage to the lower float voltage is basing it on the net current reaching the battery. If you think about it, a battery has a resting voltage of about 12.6 volts, 12.7 volts, depending on how old they are. And if you're holding that battery at the higher absorption voltage, say 14.4, that's always going to take some amount of power to make it at that higher voltage. So if it always takes some amount of power as you're charging your battery, this amount of power at some point becomes redundant. So we call that the float transition point. Now the way you would have your battery transition is you would install a current shunt in between your battery bank and everything else. So between all loads and charge sources and your battery bank. So now your controller wakes up, woo, goes the absorption voltage, and then when the net current reaching the battery drops below a certain threshold, that's when it drops down to float. And this has a benefit of two different ways. One, if your batteries are fully charged, it doesn't hold that higher voltage unnecessarily long, or if you were while holding that voltage, you get a lot of loads going on, or if your batteries are heavily sulfated, they can hold that voltage longer, making sure that when you drop down the float mode, you're at 100%. Now, you might ask, well, why don't I just hang out at 14.4 volts all day long? Why not, right? Now, if you look at the battery construction, you've got the lead plates, and then you've got this like secret sauce, this paste around the lead plates. Every manufacturer's got their own, Kentucky Fried Chicken secret recipe for this paste around the plates. But as you hold the battery at this higher voltage, that paste degrades. But if you don't get to that high voltage, that coral reef will harden on the plates. That's why a lot of times you'll hear the expression, on a lead acid battery, you don't want to discharge it below 12 volts. You don't want to discharge it below 60% state of charge, or 40% state of charge, but you don't want to discharge it more than 60%. That's because the longer that coral reef or the sulfation lives on those lead plates, the harder it is to turn back into acid, the more it crystallizes. So So you play this game between, I want to get that highest voltage in order to, kill that coral reef to prevent hard sulfation, but at the same time, you don't want to stay there too long because that degrades the special sauce. And the loss of that special sauce, that paste around the plates, is what eventually causes a lead acid battery to die. You're like, how come lead acid batteries don't last forever? It's because 5, 7, however many years you do it, it's a combination of that sulfation becoming hard on the plates, and you lose that secret sauce. We'll cover questions and stuff afterwards. I don't want to. Normally, I'm like, who's got a question? But we'll be here all day on that one. You have any comments? You can poke me if you want to jump in and. Further on, like people talk about lithium batteries a lot, right? And I like the technology. There's a lot of benefits to them. I don't want to dive too far into it. Some of the major benefits are a lithium battery doesn't care if it stays discharged. So if you're cycling your battery around the middle, it doesn't care. In fact, when you store a lithium battery, you want to discharge it about 30 or 40% before you do long-term storage on it. I've got a lithium battery, I built, long story short, but it's been about 30% charged sitting in my closet for about 7 years. That thing's still brand new, no problem. So charging wise, the difference between a lithium battery and a lead acid battery are pretty similar. I don't want to go into too many specifics because everybody's got their own opinion. Some people would say, this voltage, other people say that voltage, and everybody's got an own opinion. It's a pretty new technology out there. Of course, I have my opinion, but if you ask Battleborn or you ask, Light Blue or Relion, they're going to tell you 3 different answers on how to charge. Of course, all of our controllers, you can dial in whatever you want. The main thing is your float voltage. Lithium batteries have much higher resting voltage than a lead acid battery. So you want to adjust your float voltage higher, and I won't go into too many specifics on the actual voltages because everybody just gets that 1,000-yard stare in their eyes, and I don't want to, confuse you guys. Talking more about lead acid batteries for a second, because most people out here have lead acid batteries. If you have lithium, that's great. I'll touch on some of the benefits a little more if I have time. I do recommend battery temperature sensors. Now, a battery temperature sensor, what it does is your batteries want to get charged at slightly higher or slightly lower voltages depending on the temperature, starting at baseline room temperature, 77 degrees Fahrenheit, 25 Celsius. And so it's not too bad. If you live in Southern California where the weather is always beautiful, 77 degrees, and it may not be as important, but most of us don't have that luxury. And even when you're storing the battery, it's very important to charge it at the appropriate voltage. So when batteries are hot, they want a lower voltage. When they're cold, they want a higher voltage. So the battery temperature sensor is very minimal investment. They generally run about $30, and your batteries are a lot more than $30. So if you can increase the lifespan of your batteries by dialing the appropriate voltages, as well as providing temperature compensation to the charge profile, it makes a huge, huge difference. I can do this all day. All right. So that's your those are different stages of charging of your batteries. A lot of times, the great debate, and I get a question a lot like, should my panels be wired in series or parallel? Parallel. Everybody's got their own opinion, and there's pros and cons to each setup. Now, when I mean in parallel, I mean all your reds together, all your blacks together, all positives combined, all negatives combined. You're keeping the voltage the same, you're increasing the current. On the series, you're basically like if you have 2 6-volt batteries, you're doubling the voltage and you're keeping the current the same. Now, generally speaking, like my 100-watt, 12-volt panel, 36-cell panel down here, like I mentioned before, it's got a volts max power, an output voltage under load of about 18 volts. Now, if I take that in my hand and I put it over the panel, that output voltage is going to drop like 17, 16 and a half. You're going to lose about 7%. Depends how big your hand is and, of course, how close to the sun. But you're going to lose about 7% of your voltage. And if you look at that panel's output current, or its IMP, amps max power, you'll notice it went from 5 amps out to 2.5 amps out. So, and when you get partial shade of panel, the voltage tanks a little bit and output current tanks a lot. Now, if you combine 2 panels in parallel, basically the lowest voltage tries to dominate. Meaning, like if you guys ever had like a dead battery and a full battery and you connected them together, now the higher voltage of the full battery tries to drain in the dead battery, and you've got 2 dead batteries, so to speak. The same thing, most part, happens with solar panels when you connect them in parallel, all positive, all negatives together. If I have 2 panels, they both have a potential output voltage of 18, and I shade one to 16.5, the buddy next to them is going to be 16.5. So or if I have 4 of them, they're all going to be 16.5. There's some caveats to that. A solar panel can only provide so much of a draw, but for the most part, the lowest voltage tries to dominate. And so when you have partial shading and you put your hand over one panel, you lose about 7% of your array's production. Of course, it depends on how big your hand is. When you combine panels in parallel, the lowest current tries to dominate. So if I have 3 panels, I put my hand over one, now that'll bottleneck all the current for all the panels. So now instead of lose, 2.5, and they're all 2.5, the current can't flow through the weak point. And there are some caveats on that. Some of the modern panels will have what's called a bypass diode installed. So if you have them in series and you include one panel, then the power can just flow right around it. You lose that whole panel, but the power will flow around it. And so it won't take down your entire array. So there's no argument when it comes down to partial shading that parallel connections win. Now, that's at the same time, because you're coming in at a lower voltage, you need more copper. And it really depends how much copper. Well, it depends on how many watts of solar you have. Depends on the distance between your panels and the charge controller, but it's something you have to take into consideration. Now, people that often wire their panels in series will bring up the argument, they say, okay, but when conditions are bad, then my controller will still charge. Now, in order to charge, your input voltage has to be higher than your battery voltage, right? And so, when you wire them in series, the argument is, well, instead of having 18 volts, and that might drop down to, in crappy weather, down to, less than battery voltage, then if I double up that voltage, I'll still be charging. That's a valid point, right? But in my experience, your 18 volts output will usually always be above battery voltage unless conditions are really, really, really terrible. Like a couple of days ago, even with like super overcast skies and stuff like that, I was still putting out 15 volts on your panel. So it really depends on your particular setup. I mean, if you have a flat roof on your motorhome or moho, and you have no shading issues and you always camp in the desert, series might win. But of course, check with your particular charge controller. Make sure you match up the input voltages. I do product support, and I can't count the number of times that somebody says like, man, I wired 4 panels in series and now my controller doesn't work. Oh, you gotta want to look at your input specs on your controller and make sure that when you do configure your array, that you're within the parameters that the controller can handle. Can handle. Moving forward on things that break, right? Now, things that break. Well, okay. Okay. He's saying like, careful, don't confuse people on the installs and the things that break. Okay, I'll try to keep it a little bit simple on that. But in general, you get what you pay for. So if you have, and the main things I found that fail are like bad fuse holders. Like I do really hate flexible bladed fuse holders. We're talking wiggly wire, plastic box, wiggly wire. These things fail in a way that is really, really hard to diagnose. Now, I'm not saying all flexible bladed fuse holders are bad, but the vast majority are. I mean, you get a nice one, Blue Seeds, Little Fuse, they're out there that are good, but for the last 4 years I've been doing product support, 1 to 2 times a month, I get a call, or because somebody's controller isn't working, and the fuse isn't blown, the fuse holder's bad. So I would really recommend you guys invest in, good wiring, good fuses, and take your time to wire your system. If you've got a bird's nest and as you wire everything, that's really gonna, bite you, come back to you and get you in the rump later in life. The only other thing I'd mention, just because it's really common failure and nobody ever thinks about it, is normally if you look at your solar panel, they come with these what they're called MC4 connectors, the waterproof click-in connectors. And you would think as an industry that all these connectors, because they seem to click in together, are compatible with each other. And what we found out is, nope, right? It's up to each individual manufacturer to have their own tolerances on their own connectors. So if you guys end up using MC4 connectors, because every panel seems to come with them, like, hey, my panel came with MC4s. And then people would buy the extension or something like that, or make their own. And now you've got these mismatched male and females, and it won't fail the first day, but like later down in life, you're like, why isn't my solar working? How come I'm only getting 2 amps out now instead of getting 20 amps out? I used to get 20 amps. And that's just a really common cause of failure. It actually accounts for 95% of all residential panel failure. So just keep that in mind. If you do MC4s, I would recommend an MC4 combiner. Make sure they're all the same manufacturer. And it only takes a few minutes, and you can always order the same manufacturer or replace them I just put that out there. I don't want to go too much in all the things that can go wrong, because for the most part, it's a pretty simple system. You've got your solar panel, the input goes to your charge controller, the charge controller goes to the battery, right? That's your renewable energy. Another question that often comes up is, can I have multiple charge sources on the same battery bank at the same time, right? That's a very common question. And the answer is, yeah, no problem. Now, and I like I said, sometimes as I go through seminars, you won't retain everything, but I'm gonna just throw it out there because some people will and some people won't. Have two different modes. They provide constant current. That's when they're giving 100% of their output. They're trying to raise the battery's voltage. The next stage is constant voltage, or CV. That's where you're providing enough current to maintain a voltage. So, for example, when you turn on your car, right, your alternator is going to be in bulk mode, constant current. It's going to try to raise your battery's voltage as much as it can, max output. Once your alternator sees that your battery gets to 14.4-ish, depending on your alternator, it'll then, dial down and just provide enough current to maintain the voltage. So let's say, for example, you've got your shore power and you've got your solar power, right? So you're plugged into shore power and your battery's just floating at 13.2, right? Just hanging out there, thanks to your converter, battery charger that you have connected to shore power. When our controller wakes up, it's going to try to go to the first stage, absorption phase. Now, while your battery voltage is below 13.2, both charge controllers are going to provide constant current. They're going to be in bulk mode. They're going to try to raise the battery's voltage. Once your battery gets over 13.2, then the controller that's trying to maintain 13.2 is going to have zero output. And then the solar or whatever the other charge source is going to continue to try to bring it up to that higher absorption voltage. So let's say, for example, you get 20 amps of solar available. And right now your batteries are pretty charged. They're only taking 5 amps to maintain their voltage. They're hanging out at 14.4. If you turn on a load, that voltage is going to try to sag. And so the controller says, oh, voltage goes down, I turn up my output. And if you turn off the load, voltage tries to increase. Oh, voltage is going up, I turn down my output. It's providing enough current to maintain a voltage. So you can have multiple charge sources, and it's really common to have your solar hooked up, to have your generator hooked up. It's not like you need to isolate one or two. You might have a charge relay so that when your engine's running, it'll charge your battery off the alternator. So you can have multiple charge sources on the same battery bank, no problem. It doesn't care, but as any charge source you have on your battery, it's a really good idea to try to match that charge profile to your battery manufacturer's recommendations. Now, one other thing I didn't mention as far as the charge stages is equalizing a battery, equalization. Now, equalizing a battery is where you deliberately bring it up to a higher voltage to aggressively try to desulfate those cells. As a rule of thumb, you don't equalize sealed batteries, AGMs, absorbed glass mat batteries. That's because they're sealed, and if you get them too hot, then they can bloat and you ruin your battery. Some batteries, like Lifeline, do give you certain parameters in which they say you can recondition or recharge your battery, but I don't want to dive into too much of the specifics. Now, it's important to equalize your batteries, a lead acid battery, because that coral reef, that sulfation, tends to grow on those plates. How often should I equalize my batteries? Everybody's got their own opinion, but more or less as an industry standard, if you're cycling your battery, I mean you're charging and discharging your battery every single day, then you really want to equalize them about 2 hours every single day. Every single month. All right, that's just a rule of thumb. Some people like more, some people like less. Now, if you're a weekend warrior, you might consider doing, quarterly or biannually. But you do want to do it. Another thing equalizing a battery does, when you bring it to this higher voltage, your flooded battery will gurgle in the battery. I'm sure you guys have heard that before. And what that does is it mixes, not only does it prevent desulfation of the plates, but it also mixes the acid and the water within the battery, because the acid is heavier than the water, and that can cause stratification of your plates. Basically meaning the coral reef only grows at the bottom and not on the whole plate itself. And so it mixes, it stirs the battery in that bubbling process. But yeah, okay. Okay. Who's confused yet?
Are you guys confused? We're going to get back to basic solar for a second here. So back to the 3 parts of a solar system. We got a solar panel. That's what this guy is. Also known as a photovoltaic panel, which may or may not be a trivia question later. And we've got a charge controller here that the solar panel is getting wired into. The solar panel is what gathers the energy from the sun. It gathers the electricity out of the radiation of the sun in magical ways. I'd encourage you all to look it up on YouTube. It's a fantastic set of videos on how it actually works. So then it takes that energy through a red wire and a black wire, known as a positive and negative, and puts them into what's known as a charge controller. A charge controller takes that energy, which is usually not actually at 12 volts, it's usually at 19 or 22 or somewhere in there, and it converts it into a usable energy for the battery, which is back here. If there is too much voltage going into your battery, it's going to burn it up. If there is not enough voltage going into your battery, it's not going to charge it. Imagine your energy reserves like a dam. If you were the Hoover Dam, if your rig was the Hoover Dam, you have a storage of water in that RV, of energy, of potential energy, which is your battery pack, whether it be lithium, whether it be lead, whatever it is. When the river is flowing into that dam, you can use it all day long. You can use that sunlight energy all day long. But when night comes around, or when a storm comes around, or even just a cloudy day like this, or maybe you parked under a tree and one of the branches is shading your panel. Well, now that panel's not producing anything. Actually, that panel's probably not producing anything right now. So what happens is that when your solar panel produces energy, it puts it through this charge controller, and it charges up that battery so that when you have a cloudy day or your solar panel is broken or whatever it is, you will still have usable energy. After the battery comes your USB ports or your inverter or your DC plugs. Those are your output circuit. That's how you draw energy out of the battery. And a big part of that for a lot of you is gonna be an inverter. So what is an inverter? An inverter takes DC energy, which looks like a square, if you were to actually visualize it, and converts it into AC energy, which looks like a wave. An AC device cannot run off DC energy, and vice versa. The battery can only store energy in its DC form. So you need an inverter if you want to charge your laptop, if you want to run a fan, if you want to run any kind of household appliance with that normal 2-outlet plug that you would plug into a wall. That's what an inverter is going to do for you. Now, what's actually a better idea is to just use DC energy, like USB outlets, or for your laptop, you can go online and get a DC car charger, because then you're not making a conversion of energy. Which leads me into another really, really important subject, and this is a little bit more advanced, but it's very, very important. Every time you convert or move energy, there is a loss. And that loss is determined by the restriction of the system. So if we go back to the dam analogy, it's like if you were opening up that port. How wide that port is open is how much energy can flow through it. And if you restrict it, there is going to be a loss, which is why good wire sizes are important, which is why proper wire sizes are important, which is why proper connections are important, and which is why using good quality materials is important. The less you move around your energy, the further it will go. So those are the three major parts. You've got your solar panel, you've got your charge controller, you've got your battery, and then on the other side, you've got the inverter. So I guess 4 major parts for most of you. So the next thing I want to talk about is solar safety. It seems easy. It can be deceptively easy. When you're dealing with solar, you're really only dealing with 2 wires. So what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is that inverter that I'm talking about can be drawing 50, 80, 100 amps, and not only is that enough to start a fire, that's enough to hurt you. So, The biggest point about safety that I can make, and I learned this working at a professional solar shop, is you need to have every wire fused within 12 to 24 inches of your battery. Otherwise, if something happens, that wire will become a welding cable, and they can hold a lot of energy before they burn out. And that's not to scare you all. Again, solar is very easy. It's 2 wires. It's very basic. There's really only 2 things that you have to watch out for. The one thing that you have to watch out for is that everything is fused, so that if something goes wrong, the part that will fail is the fuse and not the wire or the plywood next to the wire or your charge controller or something else. That $5 fuse will save you a $5,000 rig. The second thing that's important to think about and be mindful of is wire sizes, connections, proper connections, things like heat shrink wrapping. These are a little bit more advanced topics, but if you go on YouTube, or one of my favorites is actually Blue Sea Systems, if you Google them, has fantastic charts out there. The marine electrical people have already come up with many standards. One of them is the APYC standard, and there's also the Coast Guard standard that boats have to adhere to. And if a solar system is installed on a boat, it has to adhere to these standards. So I would encourage you all to follow them. They're actually very basic. When you go on Amazon, these things will be certified as to these standards. So it's a really good way to navigate around. Everybody and their mom makes solar, everybody and their mom works on solar, everybody and their mom freelances solar, everybody and their mom YouTubes and DIYs solar. So what the heck is right? What the heck is wrong? And more importantly, if I buy this solar panel, is it going to go bad in a year, or is it going to go bad in 25 years? So one of the things that I would encourage you all to look for as you look at solar products is to look for these standards, and to specifically look for standards that have been established in the marine and boating environment. A lot of your American companies already adhere to these standards. They already have for a very long time. And then you'll go look at your Renogy panel and maybe not so much. They can do good, they can do bad, but I will say to you, on average, I'm seeing these Renogy panels last 3 to 5 years. I've seen a couple of them come out of the box running 70 watts of solar on a 100-watt panel. I have a great solar panel on the roof of that Jeep you're welcome to check out right now. That panel is 9 years old. It's a 250-watt panel, and it still puts out 258 watts of electricity. It has a 15-year warranty, and that's what you're going to be looking at with a quality panel. If you look at any of these American companies, or actually a lot of foreign companies like say Kyocera, they will have similar warranties. And if you're not seeing that on the product, there is a reason why it's not there. So be mindful of it. The same applies to charge controllers, and somebody like Ryan, who is willing to come here and talk to you not only about his own company, but about solar in general and things to watch out for, or an inverter company. Shout out on YouTube, where's the inverter companies? Hi, Magnum. Look for these companies that stand by their products, because there is no reason a solar panel should fail in 5 years, or that a charge controller should break and catch on fire in 6 months, or that a battery should fail in 14 months, or that an inverter comes out of the box smoking. There's no reason for this stuff other than the quality control on their side. So that is my word of warning and pitfalls with solar. You really do get what you pay for at this point. And in the next subject, which is a little lighthearted, what can you be looking at if you pay for the right stuff? Well, an average solar system is expected to last 25 years at least. I would encourage you all, as you're going out and as you're looking at getting solar systems for your rig, don't necessarily look at giving it up with the rig. You're not going to get much more money for having solar. Nobody cares. Trust me, I'm an off-roader right now. I would encourage you to look at products that will last you more than one rig, because these things will. I have a charge controller that's 9 years old. I have a solar panel that's 9 years old. I just transplant that from rig to rig. I've made batteries last 7 years. If you do your homework and if you get proper, good components, they will last you in the long run, and it will save you tons of money, tons of frustration, and tons of time. Because you really have to think and plan for not necessarily what is the worst case scenario, but what is not the best case scenario. You're not going to have 3-4 weeks straight of sunny weather. So if your 100-watt panel is just enough when you're on a sunny day, it's not going to be enough when you decide to go up to Oregon. So that's something to think about. Are you waking up in the morning and your batteries are at 12.1 and your inverter is beeping at you on a cloudy day? It might be time to add another solar panel. It might be time to upgrade to a lithium battery. But if you save your pennies and you think about what your needs are and what your solar system is telling you, you can spend a lot less money in the long run, because these components will last a very long time and are repairable and replaceable. And there are people out there like Ryan who will answer your phone call and bend over backwards to help you. I know he's helped me a ton. So that leads me into the next big thing. How do I know? How do I know if I'm damaging my batteries, or if I'm drawing too much, or if I have enough solar, or if I have this or that or the other thing? It's called the battery monitoring system. Victron's got a pretty good one. Trimetric's got one that you will hear about a lot. It's the classic one. There are a bunch of knockoff companies that make them. Again, you get what you pay for, but a good BMS is a really good idea to think about right off the bat, because that voltage meter is not going to tell you everything you need to know to diagnose if something is wrong, or if you're using too much energy, or maybe that welder you're trying to run is a little bit too powerful for your battery. A voltage meter alone will not tell you these things, but a trimetric will. And I use trimetric because it's probably the most expensive one out there, and I think they run about $180 now. That's a lot cheaper than a battery. If you think about it that way, that's a lot cheaper than killing your first battery. And so if you get a BMS, you can save yourself from that, because you can set yourself to limits and you can notice your habits. And likewise, I would encourage you to start off small, and as you find that you have more needs, add on to your system. Look at it like Legos, and think of yourself as building the foundation to your own private power company. And if you look at it that way, and you're able to monitor what is actually going on, your system will tell you what your needs are, and you will have a lot less frustration and spend a lot less money, and you will end up with crazy kooky systems like a 250-watt panel on top of a Jeep Cherokee. Solar is good. It doesn't have to be frustrating, and it's not complicated. It's only 2 wires. So those are my basics. I did want to let you guys know on my website, Nomads Everywhere, I will have a free book on solar coming out. The first chapter is actually out there right now. I will be finishing that book by this summer. Feel free to spread it to your friends. I would like this proper knowledge to get out there. So if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up there, or read the book that I'm producing by this summer, and I'm going to turn it back over to Mr. Ryan.
So I do apologize. I wasn't aware this was the basic solar, and then tomorrow is the advanced solar. So, so I'm not trying to confuse you guys. I really like Seth's presentation because he really, puts it very simply. Renewable energy is just that. It's renewable. So people often, they say, how much solar do I need? Right? That's a common question. How much solar do I need? And like Seth says, start small. Really the monster of all loads would be if you have like a commercial refrigerator, an AC refrigerator. But your TVs, your laptops, stuff like that really don't draw a lot of power. If you switch out your 5150 bulbs for little LED bulbs, and they'll draw a whole lot less current. And next thing you know, you don't need a generator. You're like, you know, you only need a generator for when you want to run the microwave, you know, or when you want to fire up the crock pot or something like that. But even coffee makers don't even draw that much power. So you can get away with a small system for modest loads. You don't need to be the people that, you know, they put like 9,000 watts of, you know, solar on their roof and they want to run air conditioning and everything like that. I mean, good luck in air conditioning going, that's not going to happen. But, I mean, don't be intimidated. You know, it is a nice thing to add on. You know, make sure you have a qualified installer do it, because it's the little details that make the big difference when you make an install. You know, especially if you're running wires and this and that, something goes wrong, and you're like, well, how do I troubleshoot it? You know, it's like, well, if you had a good installer, you won't have to troubleshoot it, but it's not gonna break. So it's not complicated. At the same time, take your time on your install or have somebody help you out on the install. We'll be up here answering more. I'll be happy to answer specific questions. I do apologize again, I'm a very detail-oriented presentation, and I think it's like, shoo, of some people, but other people might actually like, you know, the challenge themselves and like asking more specific questions. So we'll do those in more of a one-on-one type situation. Just want to thank, you know, RTR for having us out here as well. It's great. You know, if you have any questions, if you want to add anything.
Oh, we're good, man.
All right.
We're good with time.
All right.
41 minutes.
Who wants to get confused?
What are the components on the panel?
What are the what?
The components on the panel.
Okay, so looking at our board right here, right, and there's some redundant components here. Earlier I was talking about the current shunt, and Seth was talking about the battery monitoring system. Now, this is the current shunt right here. So you would wire that bad boy in between your battery bank and everything else. So if you, on the negative side for our particular battery monitor. So a lot of times I'll tell people, if you put your finger on every battery's negative, the only thing touching that battery should be another battery or the shunt. The only thing touching that terminal should be our battery and the shunt. So even your grounds and everything would be on the one side of the shunt, only the batteries. And that's what gives you that state of charge information based on current instead of voltage. So now when you're saying, now instead of saying, I think my batteries are full, I'm at 12.3 volts, it's more like, okay, out of 400 amp hours, I have 390 left. I'm 92% full. But it also, like I mentioned, allows that transition to flow based on current. So that's the current shunt. That's our particular battery monitor, the IPN Pro Remote Display. It works in conjunction with the charge controller. This is our Solar Boost 3000i. That's the actual charge controller. So you could take this whole system out. The two wires will go from here to the charge controller, and the charge controller to the battery. This is just an ancillary display. So this is one of the smaller, more basic remote displays we have. So a lot of times people have a charge controller down by their batteries, and they just want this little flush mount display, you know, where they can look at it and they can keep track of it. And this is just a simple switch that I can use to mimic the load. So if you guys wanted to see the current coming in and out of that shunt and what, you know, in real time, that's what this does. This just basically puts about a 20 amp load on the system. I know we're coming close to out of time.
Can you talk about the importance of disconnecting the panel before attempting to work on the system?
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, that's solar safety, right? Now this is DC power, right? And at 12 volts, you know, on a DC wire, you can take that wire. I can take this output and I can hold it in my hand, because you're not pushing a lot of current and you're a very low voltage. Now, if your inverter is a little bit of a different story, because even though it's dragging 12 volts, you're dragging like 80 amps. In general, you don't, and I don't want to get too deep into that, but you want to disconnect your solar prior to disconnecting your charge controller from the battery, or any load from the battery, because it gets what's called a load dump. And I'll talk about that a little more, because we got to wrap up and we're going to have some time here to do Q&A afterwards. But in general, you want to disconnect your solar panels first, or at night, disconnect your batteries. Any charge source, you don't want to disconnect it while it's actively charging. It basically got a fire hose, there's no place for the water to go. When you disconnect it, it splashes. That's a voltage spike, it's a load dump that can be very hard on your electronics. I'll let Seth wrap it up, because he invited me out here.
Can we get one more?
What's the brand name of your panel, your battery, and your charge controller on your?
I have a great solar panel and I love it. I have a Tracer MPPT charge controller, and it's discontinued. I love it, but you can't have it. And I have a Walmart EverStart battery because somebody gave it to me for free. So. Yeah, Grape Like the Fruit. They're out of Oregon. They're a wonderful company. You can actually pick them up at Home Depot. Yep, 25-year warranty.
Order them online and then.
Yeah, order them online.
And they'll deliver
Better
it
place.
for free.
What's that called again?
Grape Solar.
Are they 12 or 24 volts?
They make both. They make all kinds of sizes. They're bigger panels usually for houses though.
Can I get access to what y'all talking about online, or y'all have a YouTube channel or a website?
Yeah, so everything I talked about today will be up next week on my website at nomadseverywhere.com. I'm also writing an open source solar book for the community, and that will also be there, and that the first chapter is already up, and it will be sequentially released towards the summer.
And I'm also live on Erick the Goat Guy YouTube channel.
And Erick the Goat Guy is online too.
I think we're down to 0.
Sir, you don't have.
Please
one
like,
outside-
subscribe, share.
outside of that?
Well, also, all of my seminars are posted on our company YouTube channel as well. So when I get back into town, if you want to get your mind blown and confused with all the things I was rattling off on, then you can check that out as well.
Blue Sky?
Blue Sky Energy.
Blue Sky?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, Blue Sky Energy is the name of our company, or Blue Sky Energy Inc. Inc.com is our official website. And so on that, there's a lot of, in the Learning Center, you're going to notice there's a ton of videos on how to program and use our products. And also on our, YouTube, Blue Sky Energy YouTube channel, all my seminars are always posted. So when I get back to the real world next week, I'll put them all online, and you guys can watch them again and again until you get it all, again and again and again and again and again and again. Pause, write it down. But we'll be here to answer any questions, and I just want to thank you for having us out here.
You guys can line up right here by the microphone for questions. If you guys like, or just stand up.
Folks, if I could just have your attention for one moment. We have a report of a Dodge Roadtrek, disabled plate 135, Zebra Michael. Your lights are on.
All right, and my YouTube channel again is Erick the Goat Guy. If you want to watch the live stream. C or K? ERICK spaces. You can pretty much find it. I have 4,000 subscribers.
Good, how you doing? Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean. Sometimes, Sure.
Hey, you guys are asking a lot of really awesome questions on the stream. If you guys have any questions I want to bring up, let me know. Thank you guys for all being here. I'm sorry I didn't want to be interrupting the live stream. Let me take you around and show you guys the panels and stuff.
12-volt panel.
My question though has to do with the
So these are panels and solar panels.
my question has to do with the you mentioned
I'm Erick the Goat Guy on YouTube. I'm live right now.
and those come up here. I
You want to
I
watch
didn't
the
realize that there's a
live,
panel.
but
Yeah, it goes up to absorption,
upload it.
then down to flow.
Okay.
And equalization is above absorption. So like your absorption voltage is like 14.4, your flow voltage is like 13.2.
And then this is his Jeep setup. You see here, they have a big solar panel up here. Right here, you have a tablet mounted to the dash. That's always cool. Remind me like the Tesla thing. Probably one of that part of the solar system, or that's just for his convenience for navigating and or what have you, or just watching movies. It says do not touch. Okay. Yes, you have tools and solar equipment here. Okay, and stickles. And I don't know. Okay, you have a plug here, and all his goodies are right here. charge controls and stuff. You might be able to see it better from the other side. So here. So there's battery over there and a charge controller, BML system, all that thing is over there. We use the word don't see.
Hey folks, can I have your attention for a second? The 11:30 solar demo breakout is going to be right here.
Okay.
Instead of going over to one of the circles, we're just going to keep it right here. Okay?
You're pouring all the power. Your guitar is providing maximum output based on available input. Doing its best to raise the battery's voltage.
Okay, so it needs, so basically.
Bulk mode is like you're charging the best you can with what you got. When you get to that absorption phase, that's when you.
I'm sorry.
I got more data sheets I can grab from the car guys.
I was just trying to get in here.
I was just going to take a photo.
It's cool. You take a photo too. I was just taking a photo too.
Okay. You just want to spend a little bit of time there to balance.
I'm sorry.
Maybe 30 minutes. Anything after that, you're kind of affecting longevity of the battery.
Well, it seems to go. So we were having a problem with our power shutting off. Just starting off.
Yeah. So a lithium battery has a battery management system inside, a BMS. One thing on lithium batteries, you can't be discharged at the lowest certain point.
The way you know that is going to be your
Sorry about that.
Yes.
And if you guys need more time to read this stuff on live, you guys can always pause the video later and go back.
That's what I want to do, but
And you guys can always pause, like I say. I'm just going to be real quick with this.
Excuse me.
And then you guys can pause the video or slow it down in the options. I'm just trying to get it quickly here. Does anybody want this?
Excuse me, I just want to take a photo. Sorry.
Okay. So, there's a solo question breakout that's going to be happening in a minute. Like I say, please like, subscribe, and share. I'm Eric the Goat Guy, everybody. If you want to see the live video, that'd be great. And please like, subscribe, and share. And there's actually a lot of people here today for the soul setup. Good, like almost, what do you say, 300-400 people came to this discussion today. So I'm hoping that and oh yeah, I'm in Arizona right now, and I wouldn't mind buying a house in Arizona. That's one of the thoughts I have, or California. Buying some land. Alright, well thank you guys for all your support. I go through the comments later. Let me see. Electric light, Almada. Looking through the comments if anybody have any comments. What's up, Eric Michelle? Okay, cool. Alright. So hello y'all. Thank you guys so much.
It was somewhere between the inverter
I also have my card here. If anybody would like to.
So then this, let me show why I'm over here. Let me show you. This is the truck. If you guys want to email them and ask them to give me this van. This is a beautiful van. I think I need a van like this. Kind of set for one person, but I can always convert it to for two people. But then also a van on my Facebook I just shared. I'm trying to raise money for. If you guys want to donate to my PayPal in the description, or to the super chat, You know, this is beautiful, but these are really awesome little vans that they giving out. Are
This
they?
yours or
This is the van giveaway that they doing.
is
The
that the one that Lisa got?
uh no, this
She
is
get one like this?
they get one like this. This is the van giveaway that you can apply for on Howard website,
Yeah.
and they
I
go
don't
and
need one, but I just wondered if this is the same kind that Lisa got.
yeah. So Lisa got, I guess Lisa one of the travelers that just got a van from Howard, and so they give out vans every once in a while. I'm not really sure how that works. I think they give you a van and then you got to pay it back, or somehow with and then when the money that you pay back goes into like emergency fund for mechanical repairs or something like that. I'm not quite sure how it works, but the information on their website.
Okay. I have a friend. Lisa's.
So yeah, I'm just trying to show like the people on my YouTube channel this van. Yeah, because and they got solar panels and batteries and everything. This is just a demo of, and so right now they're just using it as a demo model of like what a van build look like, you know.
Is this actually her van that she wanted?
I see.
Because it looks like somebody living in it.
No, nobody living in it. This is a demonstration of a van build.
I know, but I understand they had her parking hers out here so that they could use it for demo.
Did I don't know, maybe they already give it away, but
Oh, they have. She won it. So I don't know if this is hers.
This might be, yeah, this might have been, yeah,
May I ask you a question?
yeah.
Can you tell me, are those fans? The little small? Because it says don't enter, so I can't really see.
Yeah, they look like they should be like fans.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, I right now living in a station wagon. I was really interested in maybe renting the van. I guess that the guy there said that this van was already the winner was already decided to be on this girl named Lisa.
Oh, wow. Well, congratulations to her. Looks
I know,
like
I'm,
you're
this van might be given away, but I know that they do several throughout the year. I'm not really sure how it works, but so yeah. Hello, brother, Japan. Where is the? Yeah, wow, you all the way from Scotland. When do you see the? I think he's speaking another language. We speak English here in America. At least this part of America. At least I do, anyways. At least most people do.
Are you from Texas?
You know, I'll give you another one.
Excuse me.
Maybe you have a really efficient
Excuse me.
No, I'm trying to listen to him too.
So this. Hey, I'm Eric the Goat Guy.
Hey Eric, I'm Bruce.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel as well. You want to look?
How's it going?
You want to look over the live stream? You guys can. It's going. I won't leave it up for people.
Oh.
So we can get what's going on. I'm a traveler. I've been all over America with my pet goat. And right now I don't have the goat anymore, but I'm working on trying to get me a new one. I'm also trying to get me a van or something. Like right now I'm.
Are you in the station wagon?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, how's it go to travel with? They like to eat everything.
Yeah. Usually you try to keep them contained to an area or like something like that. Usually what I have to do when these when I'm on the road traveling, you try to keep them contained so they don't try to eat everything in your rig, you know?
Yeah, they'll eat. So I was my buddy Dale has a bunch of goats, and I loaned him my tractor for a while, and they went to eat hydraulic hoses, the tail lights,
Oh yeah.
the awning, the roof awning I made.
They definitely can get definitely the fair share of
They
trouble.
intuitively know what you don't want them to do.
Yeah.
It seems like if you think, oh God, I don't want them to get into that, they immediately like go there without you saying anything. It seems like. I swear to God, they know.
Well, it's all and it's somewhat to do with your the issue because of the goat. Sometimes they do it. Sometimes they do it. They do that type of stuff because they actually they do it because they're actually mad at you.
Oh, yeah. They're teaching you a lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why you got to keep on the good side.
Go, man. You're like a Q&A. You should be standing up
I
in the
gotta go
concrete
to
over
the
there.
Q&A.
Get in the Q&A.
Here, hold the phone while I climb up.
Yeah, you climb up there. Don't poke. And then take this camera over to that Q&A.
Down. I need you down off the stage, please.
Oh.
Well, the other guy was on the stage.
Oh well. Let's get over there. Come on.
Nothing going. There's no logo.
Fully filming. I didn't want to
Here's the camera. People are asking questions.
If you attach something like sometimes that they
All right, we'll be back. I got a phone call. So I think we probably end up the live stream from here.
Everybody's gonna want to see that truck. Did you get that in your video?
Yeah.